James O'Donoghue. Killarney was hopping before today. Very quiet, muted end if you weren't from Mayo. Brilliant performance from Mayo. They won 119 to 17 points, a 5-point win. You must have been really impressed with how they got on.
I was very impressed with Mayo. I mean, the story could be about how poor Kerry were, but I think you should flip the script really, and it is really a success story for Mayo today, because they came down and kicked 119 in Killarney on a beautiful day, fair enough, but still everything they did was just on point. You could tell they had a lot of work done, and the argument that's come up over the last couple of weeks is what's better, playing the championship matches and coming in maybe after a few games, or going away, doing a training block and coming in. So I think Mayo really definitely did go away and do a great block of work, because they came fresh, they came sharp, and to kick 119 here and win for the first time in a championship match, first time anyone's beaten Kerry in championship matches, 1995. I mean, it's a great achievement for them, and some standout performers, but definitely the better team and definitely deserve victory.
Yeah, a first loss for Kerry at home in championship football in 40 games, which is just remarkable. We talked about, you mentioned it there, right? We don't know what the best template is in this new system. Like, we're seeing Tyrone go up against Galway at the moment. That game is live at the minute. But Mayo set the tone and the intensity. I think Aidan O'Shea got a hit in on Paddy Clifford immediately from the throw-in, first play. Jack O'Connor spoke to him briefly after the game. He wasn't happy with the lack of contact in the first half that Kerry were getting on. That definitely showed today. But like, even when you're 5 or 6 weeks out, why is it a difference when you're 5 or 6 weeks out in your own training block to playing championship football in Munster?
The difference is that you are chomping at the bit. You're watching these other teams play, and they're getting credit, they're getting exposure, they're getting analysed, and you're forgotten. You're nothing because you're not involved. So Mayo would have had Kerry in their sights for the last couple of weeks, honing in on that, what to do, and then it's up to the players then to come in and actually explode when they're on the field and do what they're being told. But you're right, the physicality side of thing, the exact opposite to Kerry's last game, where they outpowered Clare. I think that Mayo came and they outpowered Kerry today, which was very impressive. I think especially in the full forward line, they seem to get that right. We were looking at Aidan Shea here inside in the full forward line, no matter who was on him, be it Dylan Casey, Jason Foley, Tyg Morley was back there a few times. He just held them off, won every ball out in front, and was able to get fellas involved. Same with James Carr. Every ball that came in, he was out in front, he was strong, he was physical. You can be physical in attack as well as being physical around the middle in hits and in tackles. You can be physical up front, and I think that's where Mayo really imposed themselves up front, physical, and put Kerry back under serious pressure.
Yeah, the Mayo full forward line, 11 points between the three of them. They had 10 points between them in the first half. Ryan O'Donoghue kicked 5, Aidan O'Shea kicked 2 frees and a mark, and Carr got 3 from play. You were impressed with their movement and their aggression, I presume, their intent?
Yeah, I was. I mean, sometimes against Kerry, teams get caught because Tyg Morley drops back, he protects the full back line. But today, Mayo found other avenues to attack and get the ball quickly into them, and that was probably the key. You can have the best forwards in the world, but if you don't get the ball into them either regularly enough or quickly enough, it's never going to work.
How did Mayo do that today?
Well, I suppose the main thing they did was they turned over Kerry high up the field. They didn't. If you look at some teams, when they set up defensively, all they think is get bodies behind the ball close to their own goal to kind of condense the scoring area. But Mayo pushed all their tackling bodies up into Kerry's half and stopped them at source high up the field. And they made turnovers in that area inside Kerry's half, and in the first half they got 2 goal chances off it. I think it was James Carr's goal chance where Shawnee Shea was coming out with the ball. Usually against most teams he'd have loads of time in that situation, but Ruan and Aidan Shea got in on him, turned him over, and suddenly James Carr was 1-on-1 with Shane Ryan. So it's just a different kind of an attitude towards how to play, and I think they got it bang on today, because the more you can turn over the opposition in their half, the more chances you get to get your full forward line the ball quickly.
Another thing that Mayo did today, they backed themselves going long on Colin Reeve's kick out, and they got serious joy from that in the first half. I think it was 5 points they got from their own kick out in the first half, whether it was winning a mark in midfield and moving it quickly, or winning the break. Jack Kearney got in a lot of ball. That must be a huge benefit for a team when you can go long, because Kerry had the press on them, so Mayo had so much space when they won their kick out.
Well, the way the game has gone now, the opposition kick out, so Mayo's kick out for Kerry would have seen that as an attacking situation. They would have seen it, Reep is going to be kicking out the ball, we're going to win this and we're going to attack. And Mayo flipped the lid completely. Kerry's press wasn't tight enough, wasn't good enough, wasn't strong aerially enough. And they weren't strong enough on the breaks, and that's again where Mayo were incredibly physical. They were getting that secondary ball. There wasn't much primary ball being won in the air. It was all bouncing, and Mayo were in, and they kept getting that next pass off. So Kerry's press was 4 on the full forward line, 4.5 forward line, and 4 on the midfield, which means that Mayo left a couple of forwards unmarked up front. So Mayo did a great transition when they won that dirty break. They moved it to fellas like Ryan O'Donoghue or James Carr, who were free, and they just chipped handy points, and they could have actually created even more goal chances after that. Yeah. So it was an intriguing tactical battle that again Mayo got right.
One other thing, the breaks, you mentioned them there, and it's a hypothetical and it's a hard one to actually nail down, but we saw Darragh Moynihan and Diarmuid O'Connor and even Sean O'Shea set the tone physically against Clare. They bossed that game, they had the chest out. You saw Moynihan with a turnover and screaming in a Clare player's face. It was the opposite today. They were nearly outworked and kind of, there was nearly a hunger in Mayo. When you go into, have you gone into a championship match before when you're a little bit undercooked and the other team are, they're ahead of you? It's very hard to wrestle that back, I'd say.
It is often in that situation where you might think you're undercooked or there's question marks. You need one fella to just set the wheels in motion. Just get a big hit in, get a big turnover in, get the crowd involved. I remember in one of my first days we were playing Cork in the championship match. I remember Anthony Maher hit Graham Canty, an unbelievable hit, and we were young and kind of a bit nervous at the time, but that hit just said, whoa, right, we're here, kind of thing. And I think Kerry needed someone to just start that today, but instead it was the Mayo fellas. It started with that first hit with Aidan Shea. There was others like that, that Mayo just seemed to come out on the right side of those physical battles, and it gives the whole team energy and enthusiasm, and Kerry just never got that going, and the crowd were baying for it. They were baying for football, but they were baying for a bit of physicality and a few altercations, but Kerry just didn't get into that mind frame. Mayo were in it.
Yeah, I think it was 32,000 here. Like, you mentioned there was a serious buzz around the town beforehand, so we're lucky we got you. I think you were tempted to go for a couple of pint bottles beforehand, were you?
I was going to ring in sick after walking through Scott Street, alright, but the town was packed and there was a serious atmosphere. There was a great Mayo crowd, but more importantly, all the Kerry showed up to support the boys. But
and they did support them, but we really only heard the Kerry crowd get going when the Kerry team got going, and that was in the third quarter. I asked Jack O'Connor, did he go through the Kerry team at half time after they stuttered through that first half? He said he didn't, but he was looking for more contact. He was looking for that bit more intensity. He makes 2 changes. He brings in Paul Murphy and Adrian Spillane. Did they get the desired effect from that?
They did. Adrian Spillane had one great turnover, and Paul Murphy got on a lot of ball, and Kerry were kind of on the front foot. But at half time, Kerry would have been thinking, right, let's put a dent in this 5-point deficit within a couple of minutes. But instead, Mayo went and they won the hot ball. Then they turned over Darragh Moynihan to get a point. They turned over Jack Barry for Rouen to get another point. And suddenly all that kind of good feeling about we'll get this back was just dented a little bit, and it took Kerry the second wave then to kind of make a dent in the scoreboard, but they could never get within 3, and they needed that goal in the second half to kind of really put Mayo under psychological pressure, but it never came. They were
reliant on a moment of magic really from David Clifford, because his shots on goal, Reek made 2 good saves, but they were snapshots. They weren't like the one-on-ones that Mayo had in the first half, and then he blazed through that ball that we've often seen ripple the back of the net. There was one lovely move though, I think it was the first goal chance. You mentioned that it's something that you would have worked on a lot in Kerry. Get the ball in the wing and hit the penalty spot. It really nearly came off.
Paddy Clifford had it out on about 50 yards out, and he put the first kick pass into the move out to Paul Gainey in the 15 spot. He turned and straight, lovely little one bounce pass into David Clifford, who slipped to Paddy on the run again, who'd give the first pass for a lovely goal chance. But Paddy passed it back out to David for the goal chance save with the knees. But I know they were only kind of half chances, but they were good football. That was good football created by Kerry, and sometimes you just need a little bit of luck there to go your way. But really, did they deserve to get the goal and get back into the game? Probably not, but they did create the chances. Again, last week against Clare, I know they were worried about not creating enough goal chances going into that game. They took those goal chances again into this game. I think it was more of a physicality and an energy problem today rather than kind of the clinicalness in front of goal.
McLaughlin eventually buried Mayo's goal. It was their 5th attempt. Rouen had a shot on target, Carr had a shot on target towards the end of the first half. It was the early goal chances though, and we saw Diarmuid O'Connor was slipped through by a quick mark by Ryan O'Donoghue, and he kind of just buried it straight at Shane Ryan. Good save. The second chance, a fellow like James Carr, were you surprised that he didn't have a little bit more composure in front of the goal there?
He could have. It was early on, and he was in one-on-one. Do you know those chances? There's a lot of different angles to them when you're looking at them. He had so much time to run in and kind of think about it, and Shane Ryan just kind of took a step back, and then suddenly he was on James Carr, and we were kind of shouting. If he took it round him, he'd have probably just slipped it into an empty net. But it was a great save by Shane Ryan, who really did keep carrying that game in the first half. If Shane wasn't on it, it would have been a different game.
Were you worried by how open they were early doors?
I was, but it was wide open on both sides. Just the way the game panned out, and the way that Mayo embraced the game by putting that press up high. Kerry then had to kind of match it by pressing up high as well. But realistically, Kerry defensively weren't strong. The full back line was completely exposed. Mayo's half forward line were turning up for points. Flynn got one, Doherty got one, Kearney got one. Kerry's half forward line didn't chip in at all for scores, so they did really throw it around. They weren't relying on anyone. And if you look then at Kerry, look, they have the best player in the country in Clifford, but just too reliant on him.
Yeah, why wasn't there enough around him? I know Paul Ganey kicked 3 points and he definitely came into it in the third quarter. Tony Brosnan possibly just didn't have the game that he would have hoped to have had 2 shots early on that he snatched off at half time. Killian Spillan's out injured. Shawnee O'Shea doesn't look as sharp as he had been last year. Like, why isn't it clicking?
I think individually they're struggling a little bit. Of course, when you have Clifford, there's always the chance to look, I'll just slip it to David or let David do it. You know, like that's always going to be there. But I think the Kerry need to look at themselves now and say, I need to be chipping in with 2 or 3, even if they're from the half forward line, full forward line. Ganey was fantastic today. I thought he had his best game all year, showed leadership, did everything right, took his points when they came. But everyone has to chip in. We've talked about it on the football pod numerous times. Half forward line, you need to get scores there, because it dictates how the opposition defend against you. If they know you're not going to kick a score from the half forward line, then they can really just kind of leave you off and just double up on the full forward line. So I think that might be something for Kerry to look at. Yeah. Spreading the scores out and not relying on Clifford. We mentioned how quickly Jack turned to the bench at half time, making those 2 changes. Mayo emptied their bench too. They brought in Tommy Conroy, Enda Hession, Paddy Durkin, Paddy Durkin, Owen McLaughlin, who got the goal, and Stephen Cohen, who's making his 100th Mayo appearance today. Like, that is strength in depth. And they all added a little bit of something. Durkin got a point, Conroy got in a bit of ball, McLaughlin got the goal. Like, I asked Kevin McStay after the game, will you be rotating for the Louth and Cork games? He said, no, like, we're going to win these games. Like, so what do you do when you're kind of just outside the starting team there? How are those boys going to, break in? Well, all they can do is, when they get the chance, do what they did today, basically, and take it by the scruff of the neck. And because it's a group stage, and they'll probably win the group now, realistically, but they'll be into quarter-final. There's a lot of games still to be played before say a possible All-Ireland semi-final, when you definitely want your best team going well and it's nailed down. So there's going to be opportunities for all the subs. I know the McStay says he's not going to rotate, but he is going to freshen things up, give fellas a chance, not taking the eye off the ball, but just putting them in. Like Tommy Conroy would make most teams. It's just a case of building up his fitness. James Carr is fantastic today, and we saw him running after the game. We felt sorry for James after the game, didn't we? I think he played about an hour, and he was doing wire to wires here. They blamed the S&C boys. He says they're looking at the numbers. So I said it I met Carr halfway across the pitch after the game. I said, how are they making you run? I think we counted 24 seconds for a 100-metre run at one stage, when he should be hitting maybe 16. Well, in fairness, I think he was on his 10th rep at that stage. They were nearly bringing over a stretcher for him. But to play a championship game in Killarney, win and be made do runs after, maybe that's a winning mindset. Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be my last question. It was going to be on James Carr, but I suppose on Monday we'll be back with the football pod. Paddy Andrews is going to join us. He's at the Galway Tyrone game today for GAA goals, so we look forward to catching up with him about that. But just finally, Mayo winning today puts them in an unbelievable position to finish first, which will mean they go straight into a quarter final. If Kerry do what they should do, which is to get by Cork away next and Louth in their final game in a neutral venue, we could be getting another game in Killarney in Fitzgerald Stadium. You'd be happy with that? You would, but I mean, look, there's going to be question marks about this Kerry team now. They're not going to be going out and saying, right, we'll win our next 2 and we'll be back in Killarney. You know, they're going to be under pressure now. They're going to be fighting for their places. They're going to be put under pressure in training. So it's not going to be an easy summer for Kerry now. That win might have papered over a few cracks. It's better, you know, just to be exposed by a good Mayo team. They know where they need to be now. If they do beat Cork and Louth, hopefully they will from a Kerry man, then you could be looking at another massive game here in Killarney. Like if you get third place in the Galway Tyrone group, you know, you're in for a hard one. The same in a couple of other groups. So it's good that Kerry know what they need to do, and they'll have a second bite at it of getting it right here in Killarney if they can do the business against Cork and Louth.
Great work today, James. Looking forward to Monday's football pod. Enjoy your cycle home.
I will. Thanks, Tom.